Hello everyone and welcome to this Kobolds and Catacombs class review. We're going to be reviewing Warlock here. We're going to be reviewing the cards on a 1 to 5 scale for playability and flavor. The playability scale is the important one to note. A 1 is basically a trash or meme card like Magma Rager. 2 is kind of your niche cards, maybe cards like Cold Oracle. They might see play in some decks, but in the majority of decks they're going to be bad. 3 are your average cards. Maybe they have a future, but right now we can't really see a place for them to fit into the meta. 4 are your good cards. These are solid. They'll appear in many decks, but they're not going to be uh, quite fives. These are cards like Cobalt Scalebane, which you see a lot of, but it doesn't really define the meta in the way that a 5 would, which means fives are meta defining. They're the really key cards, the cards you need to think around about playing around all the time. They're the cards that really have a huge impact on the meta. These are cards like Bone Mare, Patches, those kind of cards, and even like Jadeite if we're looking at class cards. So yeah, that's the scale we're gonna have. We're gonna start with our legendaries. We're gonna start with Rin the First Disciple. This is a 6 mana uh, legendary minion. It's a 3/6 with taunt, and it has Death Rattle. Add the first seal to your hand. Okay, so the seals work as such. The first seal is 5 mana. Every single seal is 5 mana. The first seal reads, summon a 2/2 demon, add the second seal to your hand. Then the second seal is a 3/3 demon, third seal to your hand. So on, incrementing. So then we go first seal, second seal, third seal, fourth seal, then final seal, where on the final seal you're getting a 6/6, and you add Azari the Devourer to your hand. And Azari the Devourer is a 10 mana 10/10 demon with Battle Cry, destroy your opponent's deck. Yep, that's a really amazing sounding battle cry, right? You can beat those Jade Druids, but yeah, the big problem here is we have Rin at 6 mana, then we have 5 seals at 5 mana each, with, until you're hitting the 5th seal, very low impact. You're paying 5 mana for a 2/2, 5 mana for a 3/3, 5 mana for a 4/4, 5 mana for a 5/5. Even that, that's not something we're going to be happy about. So those are really low impact. We're talking 5 of those. So we're at 25 mana on the seals, 6 on Rin, so that's 31 mana before you even get to Azari the Devourer. Now, Azari, uh, even when you play Azari, once you've just spent 31 mana, the chances are your opponent probably doesn't have that many cards left in the deck. So how many cards are you even really destroying? It does nothing to the hand. It just destroys the deck. So it's kind of like how much impact is that really having? The Azari doesn't have taunt. It's just a big 10/10 body. So, I mean, obviously destroying a bunch of your opponent's cards in the deck is great, but at the point where you've just spent 31 mana to get there and 41 after you play Azari, it seems quite underwhelming, in fact. Um, and if we speak about the seals, so 41 mana, that means it's going to take you 4 turns, bare minimum. In fact, it'll take you 5 turns because first turn you play Rin, second turn you could play 2 seals, third turn you play the other 2 seals, fourth turn you'd play the final seal, and then on the fifth turn you would play Azari. So now it's a 5 turn setup, whilst you're only just developing basically vanilla minions except for Rin, which at least has taunts, but the rest are pretty much just vanilla minions. So the truth of this is, it's not really, you can't look at the 41 mana or the fact that you need to do it over 5 turns. You have to look at the fact that you have to basically play the seals and try and weave them in whilst doing other things, because you can't just spend your turns summoning a 4/4 and a 3/3 or a 4/4 and a 5/5. Those are not good enough turns when you're at 10 mana. Most other decks will run over you if you're doing that. So the game plan here needs to be to play Rin early and then fit in the seals. But at 5 mana, they're pretty difficult to fit in. Now, there is one way to speed this up, which is Bitter Bloom. So if you played Bitterbloom, first seal, Bitterbloom, second seal. That would cost you 10 life, but only 4 mana. And then you could play the third seal in that turn as well. And then fourth and final seals you could play in the next turn. But all we've really done is speed it up by 1 turn at the cost of 10 health, which for Warlock decks doesn't seem like it's reasonable. So I'm really not sold on Rin. I think Rin is probably just total trash. I think it is a 1. I'm just, yeah. I don't think that there's any real value in playing Rin. So, moving on, we have the legendary weapon. Every one of the classes is getting a legendary weapon. So obviously this is the first weapon ever for Warlock, but because Warlock is a spellcaster class, they have chosen not to um, force Warlock to have. They've chosen to give Warlock a zero mana, a zero attack weapon. This weapon is Skull of the Minari. It is a 5 mana 0/3 weapon, and it reads at the start of your turn, summon a demon from your hand. So they're trying to push the demon synergy, obviously, for Warlock. Um, and there are some powerful demons in this set as well. But overall, summoning a demon from your hand, the problem with this is you pay 5 mana, and then you only get it at the start of your next turn. So if your opponent has any way to interact with weapons, you can get absolutely no value from this. And then the minion that gets summoned will have summoning sickness still because it's at the start of your turn. So you're not even like then you're having to wait another turn before you can actually do anything with that minion. And whilst you can get around some of the negative battle cries that demons have, like Lackey Fellhound and Doomguard, you can also just you know play those most of the time for better value than you're going to get from Skull and Minari. It just seems super slow, and the fact that you actually have to have them in your hand is problematic. I mean, the dream scenario here is to be cheating out really big demons like Void Lord, which we'll see a little bit later, and cards like Mal'Ganis in Wild. But there's not really enough incentive to do that now. So overall, I think Skull of the Minari is a 2. I think with actually, I'm probably it's probably just a 1. That could change if there's really big interesting demons like Mal'Ganis in the future that are worth getting with Skull of the Minari. But I think the setup and the work to get there is too much, and I think it's just pretty trash. Next we have Cataclysm. Cataclysm is a 4 mana Warlock spell. It is an epic and it reads destroy all minions, discard your hand. So, trying to push discard Warlock here, I suppose, is their goal. Discard Warlock, it's usually more of an aggressive kind of a zoo deck at this point. Um, but I'm really not sold. I don't really think that it's it's really worth pushing it this aggressively, basically. Like, the thing is, discarding your whole hand to destroy all minions, the big problem with this when compared to Deathwing, right, is Deathwing develops you a 12/12 at the same time as doing it, so you get massively ahead on board. But with Cataclysm, you're discarding your whole hand, so you can't play anything after clearing the board, and the only way you're going to have any cards in hand is if there's something like a Malkazar's Imp or something on the board that has like Death Rattle draw you a card, where um, you can actually then get the card immediately. And even then, the best you can develop, a 6-drop, and you have to draw it. So it's not like you can set it up that you're going to, play, let's say, Twisting Nether Doomsayer, for instance, where you can set up the combo specifically once you have both the cards in your hand. You have to rely on drawing the other card. And if you have to life tap, it's even worse because all of a sudden now you can only draw and play a 4 mana card. So I think it's quite problematic for those reasons. I don't really think that it has any good support right now. I think it's maybe a niche card if you really want to work hard to get that quest off, to finish the Lackey Sacrifice quest. But overall, I think Cataclysm is a 2. A little bit above trash, but ultimately not good enough to really find its way into any kind of solid deck, I don't think. So a 2 for Lackey's Sacrifice for me. Next we have Void Lord. This is a card we already kind of. Sorry, a 2 for Cataclysm. Next we have Void Lord. a card we've already mentioned a little bit. It's a 9 mana demon. It's an epic, and it's a 3/9 with taunt. But it also has Death Rattle. Summon 3 1/3 demons with taunt. So basically, summon 3 Voidwalkers. So now, if we look at the stats for Voidlord, 9 mana 3/9. That's super understated, even with taunt. The Death Rattle now you're getting uh, an extra 3/9 stats, basically split over the 3 bodies. So if you look at it like that, as 9 mana for 6 18 stats, it looks pretty good. And importantly, they all have taunt. I think that's the by far the most important thing about Voidlord, is the taunt. I think if you can cheat out Voidlord, it's really powerful. You know, if you can cheat it out with cards like Skull the Minari or some of the other cards we're going to see a little bit later, then I think it can be pretty good. But overall, I'm not so sold on Voidlord. The only other card that really makes me really like it is Bloodreaver Gul'dan. I think Voidlord could be playable in some very specific control Warlock decks, but overall, I think I'm going to give it a 3. I just don't see it being seen much outside of very specific Warlock decks. In fact, that almost kind of lends us to giving it a 2, as pretty much just a niche pick for Warlock. So actually, I'm going to go with a 2 for Voidlord. I have been completely neglecting the flavor rating on these cards, I just realized. So Voidlord, I'm going to give it um, a 4 for flavor. I like the whole mechanic, the death rattle, summoning other things in it, and having to force you to build your deck in interesting ways to make use of it. Cataclysm is a 4 for flavor because that was caused by Deathwing, and its effect is Deathwing, basically. Skull the Minari is 1 for flavor. I don't like it at all. Rin is like a 4 for flavor because it's great memes and stuff, but it's just a terrible card. And then moving back onto the real things that matter, we have Hooked Reaver. This is a 4 mana 4/4 demon. It has Battle Cry if you have 15 or less health, gain +3/+3 and taunt. So this is obviously meant for a deck where you're just life tapping your way down in terms of health. Uh, if you do get it for its full value as a 7/7 with taunt, that seems pretty good for 4 mana. Realistically, it's not. It's 4 mana only in the sense that it's going to be able to. You're going to be able to do other things in that turn. Realistically, you're probably not going to be on less than 15 health by turn 4 unless you're a very defensive deck and very far behind. And in that case, honestly, Hooked Reaver might not be enough to pull you back from that stage anyway, because I even though a 7/7 is powerful, the single target is pretty weak to removal right now, especially with cards like Vilespine and even a bunch of Silence running around the meta. So, Hooked Reaver is weak to both of those kind of cards. But I think it could see play in some decks, but I think overall it's probably going to be better in the future rather than it will be now. And for that reason, I'm going to give it a 3 for playability. For flavor, I think it's about a 4 because it's suiting the whole hurting yourself as a Warlock thing, and that is a theme we're going to see a bit, and it is a theme I actually really like for Warlock. Next we have Possessed Lackey. This is a 5 mana 2/2 rare minion. It has Death Rattle, Recruit a Demon. So Recruit brings the demon out of your deck, so you can bring Void Lord out of your deck, for instance. The thing is, though, for anything bar pretty much Void Lord, you kind of would rather just be playing that demon. Even like Abyssal Enforcer, which is the biggest cost demon we usually see played now, you'd rather be playing it because then you're actually getting the battle cry from it. Uh, Obviously, Possessed Lackey is okay if you can trade it off and then get a Doom Guard from your deck as well. So maybe there's some specific niche decks that can make it work, and that's kind of why I'm going to give it a 2. I don't think overall, though, that it's a card you really want to put in your deck, and I think it takes up more deck slots than it's worth, to be honest. And obviously, just getting a 2/2 is slow compared to something like Bane of Doom, where the damage effect is at least immediate, even though um, you have far less control over the demon effect. Okay, so for flavor, though, Possessed Lackey, I'm going to give it a 3. I do kind of like its flavor. Um, I'm just not sure how it makes that much sense for recruiting if he's possessed. Should just be like summon a demon. But anyway, we will yeah. Recruit doesn't make that much sense for Warlock. But anyway, next we have Lesser Amethyst Spellstone. This is the spellstone for Warlock. So like with all the spellstones, it has three forms basically. It has the lesser version, which is a 4 mana lifesteal spell that deals 3 damage to a minion. And it stays at 4 mana and keeps lifesteal through all of its phases. It then goes up to a spell that deals 5 damage once it's upgraded once, and 7 after it's been upgraded twice. And the way to upgrade it is to take damage from your cards in order to upgrade it. So we're looking at cards like Flame Imp, cards like Chittering Tunneler, and some of the other cards that we're going to see coming up just now. So I think Lesser Amethyst Spellstone in the right deck, the deck that is wanting to take damage, it makes a lot of sense. The lifesteal is gaining you back the health that you're losing from being forced to take damage, so that's really important. And then, of course, you just being able to remove a minion at the same time is pretty powerful. And once it's 4 mana for 5 damage, that's pretty good. Whenever we get a spell power Jade Lightning, we're pretty happy. So I think that's pretty good. And obviously the heal scales with the damage as well because of lifesteal, which is super important. And then once you're hitting 7, which is 7 damage, the greater Amethyst Spellstone level, it's really strong. 7 damage is removal for most targets in the game right now. So that's pretty good. And gaining back 7 health is quite a lot. So that can be a pretty powerful card. And I'm going to give it a 4 for that reason. I think that it won't necessarily see play in every deck. Maybe it's not a zoo card. But other than that, it is actually a pretty powerful way to get some removal in and also just gain life, and to kind of offset the cost of playing these other cards that cause you to hurt yourself. So another card that allows you to restore health is Dark Pact. This is a 1 mana common spell for Warlock, and it reads: destroy a friendly minion, restore 8 health to your hero. So basically you sacrifice, this is like Sacrificial Pact upgraded, and it doesn't require demons. And you can't actually sacrifice, you can't destroy an opponent's demon. So no memes here with Dark Pact, unlike Sacrificial Pact. But if we look at Dark Pact, restoring 8 health seems pretty good. Control decks, you're like, cool. As a control deck, I would like to gain 8 health. But the big question becomes, what minions are you actually playing that you're happy to destroy? And that's kind of why I think Dark Pact is generally pretty dead, even in Warlock, control Warlock decks. I don't really think getting 8 health for destroying a minion is that good, because most of the time, destroying a minion is just not worth it. As Zoo, where you kind of have the most expendable minions, you don't really want to just be gaining 8 health. And you also really don't want to be drawing Dark Pact in a lot of situations where you would rather just have a 1-drop in your deck. So I don't think it works for Zoo very well. Maybe like a mid-rangey Warlock, but I don't really even see it there. You need to be destroying like eggs pretty much for it to work. Your Nerubian eggs, or in wild at least, or the Devilsaur egg in standard. Those are kind of the targets that can make Dark Pact work. But I'm not really sure they're worth it. Maybe you can build a deck with this and Ravenous Pterodax that can make use of destroying their own minions. But I'm not sure that getting 8 health is actually worth it in this case. So I'm going to give Dark Pact a 3. I think that if we find some control minions that benefit from it, it could be playable, but right now it's not. Next we have Volga Homunculus. For flavor, Dark Pact. I think I just think this theme of Warlock is overdone. Dark Bargain, Unwilling Sacrifice. Like, they're basically just looking for similar names for the same thing, and for that reason, I'm gonna give Dark Pact a 2 for flavor. I'm sick of that theme. Uh, Next we have Volga Homunculus. It's a 2 mana 2/4 demon. It is a common, and it has Taunt and Battle Cry, deal 2 damage to your hero. So we're getting a 2/4 for 2. It also has Taunt, so that's super annoying for board-based decks. And if you're a Zoo even, we've seen how good Taunt is in Zoo with cards like Tar Creeper being quite popular, even Saronite Chain Gang being very popular, especially in the Killer set lists. So The big problem this card has is that it does cost 2 mana, so it does conflict with Prince Keleseth in your current Zoolock decks, which, it does mean you have to build your Zoolock entirely differently, and it was kind of weird building one, which I will show you a list I built just now for the Zoolock. But overall, I think 2 mana for 2/4 is really good. I think Volga Homunculus really suits itself to a lot of decks. If you want to take your control deck to be better against aggro decks, it does something similar in a way to Dirty Rat a lot of the time. It just doesn't have the super high roll of being able to pull a key card from your opponent's hand in like control mirrors. But Volga Homunculus is pretty powerful, and I think the fact that it's a demon is also pretty important. It curves nicely with uh, Blood Fury Potion, which would then make it into a 5/7, which is just insane. So there's some good curve options there for Volga Homunculus. I actually think Volga Homunculus is probably the best Warlock card in the set. I'm gonna give it a 4, but it's almost leaning on a 5 to be honest, because I think whilst it's not going to change the meta too much, I think it will be in almost every Warlock deck. So that's why I'm kind of saying it's a 4, basically leaning on a 5. Depending on how you kind of want to define 5 is the big question there. I think it's the best of the Warlock cards in this set though. Next we have Cobalt Librarian. This is a 1 mana 2/1 common. Oh, for flavor on Homunculus, I really like them using this mechanic. It's something I've really liked, so I'm gonna give it a 4. For Cobalt Librarian, we have a 1 mana 2/1. It's a common minion and it has Battle Cry, draw a card, deal 2 damage to your hero. So it's the key thing here is it's cantrips, which basically means it's draws. So playing it doesn't remove a resource from your hand because you draw a card. Now, dealing 2 damage to your hero for drawing a card, that's basically like your life tapping. So you're basically playing a 1 mana 2/1 that allows you to life tap for free. But if you are playing it late in the game, you can still life tap as well. So that's kind of important. But ultimately, the big um, problem I have with Cobalt Librarian is that a 2/1 for 1 right now is not particularly great. I think that the issue is cards like Patches really, are a great way to answer Cobalt Librarian on 1. Even just playing this against Rogue, which is pretty popular right now, is a problem because they just kill it with the dagger. And even though you haven't really lost a resource for it, it's still not that great. But I think Cobalt Librarian is kind of a 3, heavily leaning on a 4 once we see Patches rotate. So I think in the long term it's a 4, I think, and in the short term maybe just a 3 until we see Patches rotate, and that will affect a lot of the decks in particular that we'll see. And then all of a sudden a 1 mana 2/1 might become a lot better. So, uh, in terms of flavor, Cobalt Librarian, once again, I like the mechanic, and it makes sense that he's just basically doing your hero power for you. And also, I really like the art with the Cobalt burning the books with the candle on his head. So I'm gonna give it a 5 for flavor. He's a cute little guy. Okay, so now we can move on to deck lists. We have 3 deck lists here. So first of all, we have um, a Zoo Warlock deck. So this deck took me a while to build, quite honestly, because for one thing, it has Volga Homunculus in, so all of a sudden now you're looking at a meta where you you want to be playing 2 drops, but it's 2 drops have not been popular in Zoo right now, so I was kind of trying to figure out what. Direwolf Alpha is the obvious card that comes to mind. And then because we're playing Cobalt Librarian and 2 of, at least this is something I would play early on to test. Basically, all of these decks are just decks to play early on to test some of the new cards in a solid archetype that should hopefully allow you to climb at the same time. But ultimately, the decks might be refined, especially to cut some of the new cards, as right now it's going to be very difficult for the new cards to make an impact, with the card pool being as big as it is right now. Anyway, getting back to this deck, we have Cobalt Librarians, and so if your opponent then plays a pirate to answer your Cobalt Librarian, that neatly walks to bring out the patches to answer the Cobalt Librarian, that neatly walks you into a Galaka Crawler turn. So that's kind of why I've included Galaka Crawler as a tech option. I think also with the way we're seeing the meta right now, Pirate's very popular, so Galaka Crawler looks pretty good. We've also got then the Volga Homunculus on 2. and the one Blood Fury potion. I had to cut this down to one eventually because I needed space for some other cards that I thought were important, especially some of the one drops and Soulfire. Soulfire is, I think, a very important card for tempo swings. And also just, Malcazar's Imp also, because of the meta right now, we're saying, there's patches and fireflies and lots of ways to deal one damage. Malcazar's Imp is quite nice with its 3 health instead. And then we have a lot of the usual suspects: Vicious Fledgling, just one of, Despicable Dreadlords, Doom Guards. Just cut it down to one Bone Mare because this is a deck that's looking to be a lot more aggressive, a lot cheaper in its minions, rather than your current Zoo decks, which tend to get a lot more value in the late game. This one really wants to push its board advantage earlier, so just having 2 Bone Mares in hand is a bit of a problem. And then we have Blood Reaver Gul'dan as our kind of like ultimate late game option. With the Dreadlords, the Doom Guards, and obviously the Volga Homunculus is now as well. We've cut one Voidwalker because the Volga Homunculus also serves as a really good taunt to get back after Blood Reaver Gul'dan. So ultimately, this is a Zoo deck that's more akin to the standard Zoo decks we saw before Prince Keleseth. Is just a lot lower curve and very reliable, I think. Saranite Chain Gang was a card I had to cut from this, which is pretty nice, especially if you're going into your Cobalt Scalebane turn on 5, and that's definitely something worth considering. But ultimately, it was kind of a case of trying to figure out where to make space for it. You could easily drop the Fledgling and the Blood Fury Potion, but they're actually both really good on 3. Fledgling is really good if it's developed behind a Volga Homunculus, which is going to protect it and allow it to actually get most value. So might even buff up. You might even play 2 Fledglings and only 1 potion. Because honestly, playing a Fledgling behind a Homunculus might be better than just playing a Blood Fury potion on that Homunculus. Okay, so I think Zoo will be pretty good going forward. I think Volga Homunculus could be the card that pushes Zoo away from the Keleseth deck. Especially, it gives you an option to include Galactic Crawlers as well. So it definitely gives Zoo 2 kind of builds: the Keleseth build and the way that wants to tech against Pirates, which is this Galactic Crawler build. So that could help Zoo, especially in its matchup against Rogue. Okay, next we have a Control Warlock deck. The one in the middle here, we have a deck that has Void Lord in. It has Hooked Reaver in for when you're taking damage. Lesser Amethyst. Still has 2 Volga Homunculuses because it's such a good early defensive tool, and it obviously synergizes well with the Lesser Amethyst Spellstone as a way to proc that. We also have the Hellfire and the Abyssal Enforcer in this deck to help with the upgrading the Spellstone. Now, the other interesting inclusion in this deck is Master Oakheart. So this is one of the neutral legendaries in the set. Master Oakheart is a 9 mana 5/5 that has Recruit, a 1 attack, 2 attack, and 3 attack minion. So, what we have done to try and set that up as best as possible, we want to be summoning cards with the Recruit that have an immediate impact. So the big cards that stand out here, and the reason we're looking at it in this Warlock deck, are Void Lord, which is giving you a big taunt as your 3 attack minion. Now we have no other 3 attack minions in the deck. And then when we're looking at 2, I was looking at Dirty Rats quite a lot, as well as even Arthas for value. I think if the meta slowed down, you could play Arthas for value, but right now, just getting Volga Homunculus is pretty good, especially when you have Blood Reaver Gul'dan in the deck. It means that you're going to be able to get extra value when your Blood Reaver Gul'dan comes down, and you're not getting the downside of the Volga Homunculus, which obviously it's Battlecry. And then for 1 attack minions, we have Tar Lurkers as the ideal option. This is just a really high value minion to get. Basically, you're getting a 5 mana 4/7 during your opponent's turn at least for that with the Master Oakheart. So now Master Oakheart, if it pulls a Void Lord, Tar Lurker, and a Volga Homunculus, is giving you a ton of taunt. All of those minions have taunt, and they have really good stats. So I think that it's pretty good value from Master Oakheart, and this is the kind of deck that could make Master Oakheart work. Uh, the one thing we kind of had to do at some point here was play Blood Mage Thalnos, because we wanted to get extra synergy with our Drain Soul, Defile, Hellfires. We needed even the Lesser Amethyst Spellstone, we needed some spell damage in the deck. The question then really was about Tainted Zealot or Blood Mage Thalnos, but because we were also playing one Skulking Geist, I kind of felt if I'm only going to play one of a spell damage minion, I'm going to play Thalnos instead of the Tainted Zealot. If I was going to play two, then and let's say not play Skulking Geist in a meta where either Jade Druid's not popular or after rotation maybe, then we could actually play two Tainted Zealots and no Skulking Geist, no Blood Mage Thalnos. But for now, just getting the extra card draw from Thalnos is pretty good to even in Warlock. Uh, so I think I really like Thalnos for the deck right now. So this is kind of the control Warlock we've got. Also got your Twisting Nails, just a lot of board clear and some solid single target removal in the Siphon Souls and the Lesser Amethyst Spellstones, and then just basically taunt. It's kind of like a taunt warlock at this point. Almost all the minions have taunt or do something to clear the board. Pretty much just Skulking Geist that doesn't do that. Okay, and then the final deck we have. This one's a lot more of a, a shot in the dark in terms of like a deck that could be viable. I think the Control Warlock could be good, especially in certain tournament metas, but you're gonna be wanting to ban Druid or Razak's Priest. You know, Jade Druid and Razak's Priest are the two big reasons that Control Warlocks in general are not good right now, and that also negatively affects the Kazakus Priest that we're gonna see here. I'm sorry, the Kazakus Warlock that we're gonna see here. So, in terms of new cards, I've tried to fit quite a few in. We've got the Lone Champion, which is, we've got the Volga Homunculus. We've got Lone Champion, which is a new neutral card. It's a 3 mana 2/4 that has Battle Cry. If you control no other minions, gain Taunt and Divine Shield. So in a deck like this where you're not getting reliable curve, you're not going to be generally on the board in the early turns, it makes a lot of sense to play Lone Champion. So that's kind of why I've gone for it here. I mean, we're even playing Tar Creeper as well for some extra early defense, and Stonehill Defender as well just gives you extra value and can now also discover Void Lord. So that's another useful thing you can get from Stonehill Defender now. And then we have the Lesser Amethyst Spellstone. We've got a few ways to activate that: the Homunculus and your Hellfire and um, Abyssal Enforcer. In this deck in particular, you're probably only getting it up to 5 damage for 4 mana, but that might still be okay. So you know that's one of the biggest issues with this deck is that there's not that many ways to activate it. Um, so yeah. Then we have Hooked Reaver for the save basically when you're low on health, as you're gonna have to be because you're gonna tap relatively often in this deck probably. Uh, then we've got the Corridor Creeper. It's another neutral. Costs one. It's a 7 mana 5/5 epic, and it costs one less whenever a minion dies while this is in your hand. So that's like a permanent cost reduction. So the idea is you have a lot of board clear in this deck and a lot of even like tokeny minions with Saronite Chain Gangs and some of the other cheaper early minions that you could get Corridor Creeper down, especially after playing a Twisting Nether. Overall, though, I think it's kind of a filler and probably not good enough to be in the deck, quite honestly. It would largely depend on the meta. And then we have Cruel, the Unshackled, the forgotten card that gives you value for having no duplicates in your deck, summoning all your demons from your hand. A great way to get out of Void Lord, obviously, and that's kind of the synergy idea there as well. Um, one thing that was really difficult to cut, because previously in Knights of the Frozen Throne, I made a Kazakus deck as well, which also had Cruel and it had uh, Lakari Lakari Fellhound and Doomguard. But ultimately here, I I had to cut those because most of the time you don't get to play them. And if you're just playing Cruel most of the time and getting Void Lord or even just Abyssal Enforcer or like if you get Despicable Dreadlord, it's pretty good too. The Hooked Reaver is unfortunate because you'd rather be playing it with its battle cry, unlike most demons. So I'm not sold that Cruel is good in this deck, but it's definitely worth trying to see if the Singleton um, option is enough payoff. Between that and Kazakus, it's pretty much just those two for payoff. So those are kind of, I think, some of the main themes going forward for Warlock. I think the most important is, or the most viable of those themes is going to be Zoo, and the Control Warlock is definitely going to be more of a tech deck for certain tournament metas and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I see Warlock going forward. I think Warlock will still be pretty good in the meta. I think Zoo could get a bit stronger, especially in the other board-based mirrors with Volga Homunculus and Galaka Crawlers coming into the deck. I think that could help it against Rogues and any of the decks running the Pirates. So I think that Zoo was going to be pretty good. It's already pretty decent right now, coming toward the end of the Knights of the Frozen Throne meta. I think the Control Warlock could be pretty good. I've definitely got my eye on Master Oakheart, and I definitely want to try this deck if I do open Master Oakheart as well as the Void Lords that I need for the deck. So I think it's maybe something worth trying. Ultimately, though, a lot of the time when you're building your Control Warlock, you're going to be building it for the tournaments when you want to tech just heavy removal, in which case you're probably wanting to play other things than this kind of Master Oakheart themed deck. And then with the Kazakus Warlock, this seems more of a left field choice. I don't really think it's going to be particularly powerful. I think it just looks more solid to play the Control Warlock with, 2 copies of all your removal, to be quite honest. So ultimately, I think that you're probably going to be better off playing the uh, Control Warlock. I tried to put Rin in the Kazakus deck, and then like when I thought about it more, I was like, nope, I can't even fit Rin in this deck, which is kind of willingly taking not as great cards. So yeah, that's kind of the situation for Warlock. If you enjoyed the video, please like and um, subscribe on YouTube if that's where you're watching it, or please follow on Twitch. You can also find me to give me any feedback at dib_gaming on Twitter. So yeah, please let me know if you have any feedback. We will be coming with all the rest of the classes soon, and for most of the rest of them, there will be guests joining me. So hope you enjoyed it. Cheerio for now.